straight to live.
Cool.
And we're straight to live. All right.
Hi, everyone.
Someone forgot to add the intro video, but that's okay. One of these days, I'm gonna have to queue something up that's like legit an intro video and not just like the countdown that they give you for free in StreamYard.
We can do the countdown.
We could.
2.
Ooh, look at you!
There
Did
we
the
go.
fancy 3.
Done.
You did the 3 like this.
Oh yeah, I can't. This is hard. I do this or
this
this.
like
I
hurts.
can't.
I don't
quite.
want to do that.
I can't.
It's too hard.
You know who could do it? AI, because it can have as many fingers as it wants.
Yep, and it often does.
I was messing around with Chat GPT last night because my daughters were talking about Hogwarts, and I was like, I bet I could have Chat GPT take a picture of the 3 of us and turn us all into wizards at Hogwarts, and it did. It was pretty awesome, and we all had the right number of fingers, which was impressive. I was like, whoa, who's learning? Good for you.
Didn't you recently did that for me, you, and Kat, right? With the whole like knitted.
Yeah,
I don't know what
made everybody look like they were made out of yarn.
Yes, and that was so cool. That was so cool.
So there's like there is a live stream on main website now.
I love it.
I guess I could share my screen and show it.
While you're bringing that up, we do like stories with my 3.5-year-old of like, I want a raccoon to be in it, and I want this. It invented at one point a gnome with a beard made of popcorn, and so now we bring that character along with us, and so we have it tell us this cute little story that I narrate to her, and then we have it draw a comic of us on the adventure, and so we just alternate. It's the cutest thing in the world. Oh, look how great that is.
So speaking of AI and like vibe coding and stuff, I decided to build this website entirely by vibe coding. So I just
turned out really well.
It did. So I just popped open a not Chat GPT. I was using a GitHub Copilot. So I just popped open a chat window and I told it what I wanted to build. I was like, I'm building a website for this streaming show. Ask me questions about what you need to build the website. And it came up with a whole list of questions and put them all in a markdown file. And then I went through the file and answered all the questions. And then I wrote back, I said, I've answered all the questions, start building the website. And I had to iterate a bunch of times because like, this doesn't look right. And I was like, hey, I want a carousel with the latest episodes. Build that for me. And then I want to populate it with a JSON file. So make that JSON file for me. I still had to like actually populate the JSON file, but everything else in terms of the functionality and JavaScript behind the site, that was all Copilot because I don't know anything about JavaScript.
It's an unforgiving language too. It is not a great language for starting with.
But yeah, look how it's like responsive. It asked me if I wanted it to be mobile friendly, and I said yes. We've got like previous guests and a connect form, which is not actually connected yet. I have to actually get it connected to something that can send emails. But yeah, I like built this whole thing out, and then of course I purchased the domain. Livestreamonmain.com, I think, is the actual domain. But yeah, I did the whole thing, and then I actually had to wire up the domain myself. Like it couldn't quite do that. But then I had it because I have the GitHub MCP server. I had it create a repository on my GitHub account and then push the code up to that. And then I wired it to Netlify and boom. The whole thing took a couple hours, but it was a lot of fun.
Too cool. Too cool.
It's so cool. It's a really different way of working from, the reading Stack Exchange and reading code. And instead you're like talking to this robot that lies to you, but also knows a lot. It's a really dramatically different way to work.
It was so nice not to get bogged down in two things that like drive me crazy with web design. One, like I said, I don't know JavaScript at all. So if there's a problem with the JavaScript, I'm just screwed. And then like the other thing about it is if you try to do this with like a WYSIWYG editor, you'd have to learn the editor and its weird quirks, like trying to learn how to use Canva all over again. But instead, I just could describe exactly what I was looking for. And it's like working with like a junior web developer who can then crank it out and come back to me. Like, yeah, this is so much nicer just to be able to use English and say, make a carousel for the hosts. No, that's too big. Make it smaller. And it just does the thing.
Doesn't complain, doesn't bark at you.
Normally it would be me complaining. Okay, we've got some questions. This is great. And we didn't even do introductions. So sorry, everybody. I'm going to start with that, and then we're going to hit the first question. So hi, everybody. I'm Ned Bellavance. I'm one of the co-hosts of Day 2 DevOps. And with me is my esteemed colleague, Kyler. Say hi, Kyler.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyler Middleton. I am a developer for AI stuff, as well as, all that old stuff like cloud and DevOps. And I'm really excited to be here. All this stuff is so fun. And I'll hand off to Marino.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Marino Wijay over here. I am an architect over at Kong doing some API magic. And I'm also the co-host of Livestream on Main along with Ned. So this is a little bit of a crossover episode, If you've ever watched BoJack Horseman, like have any of you ever watched it? No.
Just the beginning.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a very animated show, obviously, but it's also very adult. And there's one character who's actually a golden retriever, I think. And he, whenever he comes into the scene, he always chimes in with, what is this, a crossover episode? Because he's just, and it's funny because that's exactly the kind of vibes you would get from the 90s and whatnot, where you got different shows that just intermingle and crossover. Anyways, that's what this is, kind of ish, if you will.
We're kind of, sort of, but not exactly a crossover episode. Okay. We have a question from Nixer. They say, what do you think is the best way to learn how to create Azure resources on Terraform? I'm trying to do that on work. And then they're providing an example. They tried to create a Databricks workspace and then a subtask to create a private network. Then they have 10 question marks above my head. How do I connect resources? So I don't know. Kyler, you work with Terraform a ton. I know I have my own opinions, but what do you think is the best way to learn how to Terraform with Azure or Azure with Terraform?
I'm such a big fan of Terraform and clouds because you can just go do it. I have a couple different ways. I have two kind of cheatery ways other than just, extensively reading Terraform or asking AI, both of which are totally valid. Number one, use the wizard on the console to deploy it and just see what it looks like. What are the questions that the wizard asks you? Pay attention to those because those are things you configure in Terraform and things that have an impact on your deployment. And number two, I love this cheater way because I haven't seen very many people do this. Go and build it in the console and then just deploy the just minimal Terraform set and then import it. Terraform import the real resource into your set and then say Terraform plan. And it'll tell you all the ways your code differs from the real one. And it'll say, oh, I'm actually removing this attribute because you don't have it set. Use that and copy it and steal all of it and just kind of iterate on that until your Terraform exactly matches what's actually deployed. And then you can see how the Terraform works. I've had to do that for some poorly documented stuff in the consoles and in Terraform before. Totally. I think those are both my elite hacks ways of just playing with it.
So on that particular thing, I want to show a new feature that's been added to the portal. So I do the same thing. If there's a new service or a service that I'm not super familiar with, the portal is going to walk you through gently on how to provision that thing. And it's going to kind of cover up all the actual bits that have to be provisioned underneath. But there's a new feature that they're added to the portal. I don't know if it's still in preview or not, but if you go to a resource group where your stuff is deployed and you go to export template, one of the options now is Terraform. So you can click on the Terraform and it will look at all the resources that are in your resource group and build out a Terraform configuration for all of those resources. It's all hard-coded, so it's not using any input variables or anything, but this will get you from 0 to almost hero super fast. And it doesn't actually support all resources just yet, but it supports a lot of them. So this could be a way to really I deploy it in the portal, and then I codify it using this export thing and pull it into my code editor and start adding inputs and all that kind of stuff. And then do a plan, see what happens.
I love that. For a long time, Azure and AWS weren't supporting Terraform natively. Like they were helping write the providers, but they weren't like letting you export. Like actually, we would prefer you use, Bicep, ARM, Cloud Formation. But I love that we're starting to see more native support for Terraform. It's clearly won the war, right? It's like 90% of the use cases or something. Like it's 90% of the use. So love that.
I think it's wild that that Bicep is still a thing that folks at Microsoft are pushing, because it's so close to Terraform, and I'm like, just use Terraform, man.
Mm-hmm. It's free.
It's free, and why do you need to learn a third language? Like you already made me learn ARM templates for a while.
So that has me wondering: are there any systems or tools out there that help you like migrate from Bicep or CloudFormation to Terraform?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't seen anything that like looks at the code for one and then does like a crossover to the other. Most of the tools I've seen will inspect your current environment and then codify it using Terraform. So if you deployed it with Bicep and then later you want to like codify it with Terraform, you can do that, but not like a direct language to language thing. Maybe there's an opportunity there. People.
I think the tool is called AI, called ChatGPT. And I don't know if it would do a perfect job. I know there's some static conversion tools for like Bicep to ARM and ARM to Bicep that Microsoft has released, but I haven't seen anything that can sort of statically convert it. I'm very curious to see how AI would do. Because it's very good at refactoring code. And that's basically like, transcoding it into a different language. So I think it would do a good job.
Maybe that's a future experiment that I can put up on my YouTube or something.
Yeah.
So we don't have any more questions yet. I do want to say hi to anybody who has joined. Yeah, shoot.
Oh, go ahead. I have a topic. Oh, I'm going to provide this link. Maybe we can share this out to folks, but I just think this is fascinating. Well, let me preface it while I go and find this link. There is a study that just released. It's pretty well structured. And it said that AI is really helpful for languages that you don't speak well, right? It makes you better for languages that you don't speak well. But for languages that you do understand well, that you're good at, it actually hurts your efficiency. But engineers don't know that. Let me see if I can post this. I think I can.
I'm curious which study that's from.
Engineers have a pretty bad ability to estimate. Oh, it's failing to link. I'll send it over to you, Ned, and maybe you could share it out.
Yeah, throw it in private chat and I'll
So it's interesting because there's this huge divorce between what is actually happening and what engineers believe is happening. Engineers believe that they're like 20 to 30% more efficient, and they're actually about 20% worse on languages that they're good at when they're using AI. And I worry that it's because it's so fun, like it's so cool. It's fun to work with AI. But also, like, I don't know if it's very fast for the languages I understand well, at least. Like your JavaScript example, for sure, I would use AI too. JavaScript is terrible. But for, the Terraform, Python, I'm pretty fast without AI. I'm curious if y'all have seen this study or have thoughts about it.
I haven't seen this study. What about you, Marino?
I have not. I just clicked the link because now I'm very ultra curious. And, it actually, when you think about it, it's very true. Like if you're an expert at something, I don't know why, but subconsciously you'll still go to a system to validate your knowledge. You'll be like, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Is this correct? Is this the right approach? Even though you already subconsciously know it. And you're right. I think it hurts your efficiency in a lot of ways. But you brought up something very valuable, right? So a for loop is a for loop wherever you go, regardless. A stop sign is a stop sign in any language, pretty much.
Right.
I think it's like what we were just talking about with respect to going from Bicep to Terraform. If you understand Terraform very well, and you just say, hey, I'm trying to do something that's very, very specific in Azure, we don't have a Terraform provider for it, and I don't want to custom build it yet. What would the bicep version look like? And I think this is very much what we're trying to go after, right? Just finding a very clean translation layer, if you will, that we're the partial translator, and then you've actually got the system that does the job for you. I want to read this article though. I definitely want to dig a bit deeper here.
Yeah, so I haven't read this study yet, but I want to bring up another study that was recently like pre-published and was taken apart by friends of the show, Ashley Javanette, can never say her last name, and Kat Hicks. So they have their own podcast called Change Technically, and they took a look at this paper by Saskia Giebel and other co-authors. And this particular one, it says basically that like AI is making us dumber, was the main takeaway, that it's impairing cognitive functioning. They had the people who were participating in the study, they had them one group write an essay on their own, and another one leverage ChatGPT to write their essay, and then they like monitored their brain function and stuff. And because Ashley has a doctorate in studying brains, like neurology, she had some things to say about the way the study was crafted and their experiments that they were doing and their level of validity. And then Kat had some things to say about their statistical analysis and the way that they went about analyzing the data that they got. And basically it was like, yeah, this study doesn't really say anything, but they made some big conclusions anyway. And so that would be my question about this study. I would love for Kat and Ashley to take a look at this too and apply that same critical lens. Is this a well architected study that has valid, statistically significant findings? Or is this people who had a bit of a hunch and then went to go find data to prove that hunch? And I don't know, like, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but if it feeds into the hype, then I'm immediately suspicious of it.
Totally. And I like it in that it has a kind of balanced take, or at least it feels balanced. I haven't looked at their methodology yet, but it is a tool, and that tool can make you better in some ways and worse in some ways. And I like that kind of balanced sort of take. It's not amazing. That's not, brilliant, that solves all the problems. And it's not a terrible, awful thing to happen to us. It's a tool, and it's really good at some stuff, and it's really bad at some other stuff.
I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me is it looks like they used 16 developers in their randomized controls trial, and I just don't know if that's big enough. Maybe it is. Again, like, that's not my field of study, but I would love to hear some people who this is their field of study kind of weigh in on the statistical significance and the way the experiment's constructed. But like, I do have some confirmation bias that I feel like what they're saying is right. Then if you know something already really well, ChatGPT might allow, or any of the LLMs might allow you to think about it less. And that might not be good. But if you're just starting out with something new, then yeah, it can really give you a jump start. But I think it's also in how you use the tool. Like, are you using the tool to just write it for you, or are you asking it questions? Like, tell me what this code does and why it does it. Like, that seems more useful than just, hey, make this thing exist for me.
Yeah.
Jarrett's got an interesting point there.
Yeah, I was going to bring, thinking about this. The brain is a muscle, and critical thinking is a cognitive function. Yeah, well, Marino, what resonated with you about Jarrett's comment?
So the fact that you'd have to offload like exercising the muscle to something else kind of seems odd to me, because not that that's a bad statement, it's actually true. Are you going to offload your gym workouts to something else, another system? No. And very much how you have to think through a problem is that exercising. You cannot rely on AI. I think what you need to think about is you've solved most of that problem, but you're missing pieces, and you need AI to fill those gaps. Like for me, what those gaps might be is like, all right, I know what I want to do when I'm deploying a system to a cloud provider or something, and I want to use Terraform, and I know the different providers that I need to take advantage of, but can you give me the specifics, because I don't have time to build it out and test it out. And oh, by the way, tell me how I should effectively run this, which, even though you've done a lot of the critical thinking, you've also been very, oops, that was loud. That was very, you're very central to what your end goal is, and you're very specific about what you're looking after. Whereas if you said, hey, I want to deploy this to the cloud, give me Terraform, it might not really think about what you're really after, and it might just construct a whole bunch of things for you. And that's where you're removing a lot of that brain power, that critical thinking, exercising of that muscle. So I think it's the problem solving element. You solve the problem, you identify where you're trying to address those gaps and what gaps you have to like pick up versus having to go research it. AI does the research and then gives you some more details so that you can continue your problem solving, if you will. Or
I think that's exactly true. I've seen some really dramatically different results from folks that use AI, and it's exactly, the schism is what we're talking about here. If you're offloading what should I be doing to AI, it will do a terrible job. It does not know what you should be doing. It doesn't know why you should be doing it. If you offload how to AI, it does an exceptional job. So the way to keep your cognitive functions strong and in sync with this like helper bot that's doing stuff is to have very clear requirements and design and task lists. I'm not allowed to talk about this yet, but AWS is launching an AI-powered IDE next week. So keep an eye out for that. It's about Thursday-ish next week. And I have gotten some early access to it, and it's really, really cool. But the first thing that it does when you want to do something is you can't just vibe code. You can't just say, go do the thing. It walks you through creating a requirements document that's like literally a markdown file in your project. And then it converts that to a design, and you define all the tools that will be used to execute this. And then you review it, with the bot and have a conversation. And then you say, okay, cool, that looks great. And then you define a task list together. And then it starts to work the task list. And it helps structure that cognitive work of what it should look like and the input output that is required for the project to be successful is something you do with your human brain, because AIs are terrible at that. And then the tasks actually go build the JavaScript. I don't care about that at all. I only learn coding because I have to. And then it'll go do it out for us. And I love that. As soon as this comes out, I'm going to try to license it for my whole team because I'm a huge fan of it. That's like Thursday next week. It should be soon.
Wow. That's exciting. I what you were describing was like exactly how I vibe coded the website, which was, here's my general idea of what I want to build. Ask me a bunch of questions. That's another thing AI I found is really good, is I will tell it to ask me questions about the thing I want, and it ends up coming up with a whole bunch of questions that I didn't even think about yet. So it's helping me sort of brainstorm, but the actual like thought process of what makes sense, where things should go, that's still all coming from me. But yeah, I think if you just totally hand over the whole process to AI, you get garbage. You get slop.
Yeah.
If you're using it as a tool, like you would use other tools, it's like you wouldn't just like swing a hammer wildly and hope it hits a nail. So don't swing your AI wildly. Like use it in a focused way to solve a problem. Everything looks like an AI nail, I guess.
You don't say go build a house. You draw a picture with an architect, and then you agree that, oh, that's what the house should look, and then you have the people go build it. And right. I don't know. I just made that up, but that's brilliant. I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
So do you think if I were to feed some LLM my lucid diagram, it would infer what I'm trying to build and then give me a breakdown of every single component? Or do you think like it needs some additional? I mean, if I've drawn out all the lines, this is the cloud provider I'm using, this is the data system I'm using, this is my pipeline and what type of pipeline it should look like. I know, by the way, I'm using, I don't know, Kubernetes in the background or something like that.
Right.
Should it be able to build that all out? Like, is that a good thing? Or do you think we still need some level of governance there?
Yes.
Yes. Ditto.
What
We've talked
you
to
just
people
made
a
me
lot.
think of is like, because we did a whole episode on MCP servers and the security thereof. So like my mind's already thinking of MCP and security, but like I'm kind of thinking of all the different considerations I would have when I'm building out an architecture that might not be in that diagram, like security. What security considerations do I have to take into account? Cost optimization. Like, what are the major costs in this architecture? And is there a way to build this same thing in a more cost effective way? And I'm envisioning that you could build like an expert AI for each of those categories and have each of them analyze the design from their perspective to figure out what's the most secure and cost effective way to build the infrastructure that you want. You are still driving. You still know, like, ultimately, I want this infrastructure to exist to service this application, but I would like advice from other sources on the best way to approach it.
Yeah, we have been talking to folks a lot, and I have found this really useful to think of. Imagine that this AI is another person, but it's a new employee and it's their first day. And if you give them, hey, go build a website, they'll do their best to build a website, but they don't understand your business proposition, the value, the stuff that actually matters, the tooling, the automation, all the information security policies, etc. forever, like everything we train people on when they start. And so you need to get as close to that as possible for it to do as good of a job as you would if you were to spend a month doing this instead of 4 hours for the AI to build it. So as much as you can, we want to link our AIs to maybe our Confluence or our SharePoint or our information security policies. So this agent does need to spider out into your environment and learn about your business and learn about your processes. And we don't have great tools for this yet. It might be MCP to give it the ability to like query your APIs. But the tools are coming. They're getting more, they're getting more better. They're coming along. So we'll start to see stuff that we're not just telling our agent, here's a mermaid diagram, go build the thing. We're saying research the project and read the previous projects and see what matters and talk, maybe like chat with our InfoSec team to gather a list of requirements. That sort of contextual enriching is going to become more important because it's the only way for it to do a good job. Even if you're a brilliant engineer with no security context, you're not going to do a good job. And we're missing it. We're missing it entirely today.
That you made me think of something. All three of us are teachers of some kind. Is that fair to say?
Yep. That's my primary job. I just engineer. I moonlight as an engineer.
And like when you have to teach a topic, what's the first thing you learn about that? What's the first thing you discover about that topic when you have to teach it to somebody else?
That I don't know it as well as I should.
Yes, exactly. Whenever I've had to like teach somebody else about a thing, I immediately realized the giant gaps in my knowledge that I've been able to pave over until now. But now I'm like, either it's because the other person's asking me questions, or I'm just thinking more deeply about it and coming up with my own like what if scenarios and going, oh man, I thought I knew how this whole process worked, but I've got huge gaps here. I feel like what you're describing, like explaining something to an AI like it's a new employee, would actually force you to think harder about the whys and the hows of what you're doing now. And you may discover improvements completely outside of the AI. It's kind of like rubber duck debugging, right? You have to explain your process to something else, and you're like, crap, why am I doing it this way? This is so dumb. I'm speaking from personal experience, of course. Just use my I words here.
Exactly.
On that note, I have to deliver a boot camp in about 3 weeks. And half of the stuff I know, the other half I have no clue. The other problem is like I also don't know my audience and the level at which they're at. So I have to assess a few things, like am I going to have the right level of knowledge to be able to deliver to them and explain to them this is how something should work? Am I going to be too beginner for them? Am I going to be too advanced for them? And that's like the other assessment that you do. I think as a teacher, that's the hardest part too. You don't know your audience, and you try to find something that strikes the balance of someone who is an expert versus someone who has no concept of what the heck you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult because for some people they'll be like, I shouldn't even be in this boot camp. For others, they're like, what the heck is an API, right?
Yeah,
So
that's true. I was teaching a class this week for Terraform, and it was a public class, so it wasn't all people from the same organization, and the level of knowledge going in was wildly different across people. There were some who had never really coded before. They were like ClickOps kind of people there, and then I had like a seasoned software developer in there. And so the questions I was getting from these two extremes were it was wild. It was like whiplash. Like one would be asking me like very specific questions about data typing, and the other one would be like, so can you explain the difference between a resource type and a data source again? And like both totally valid questions, but it was like, whoa, I'm like all over the place here. AI is kind of like that. It's so dumb about some things, not dumb, but so ignorant of certain things, while being extremely knowledgeable about the minutia of other things. And I feel that whiplash when I'm working with AI too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We scheduled this for half an hour. I don't know if we want to keep going for a little bit or if we want to call it for this month. What do you
y'all
think,
can
Kyler?
keep going, but I actually have an emergency I have to go to. So I will catch y'all later. Enjoy. Have a happy Friday, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
All right, Marino, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, that's a shame. I hope it's not a terrible deploy on a Friday kind of scenario where things are blowing up.
Yeah.
Well, before we sign off, I thought maybe we could give folks a little preview of some upcoming episodes we've got for Day 2 DevOps. So one that is going to drop next week is our interview with Daniel Steinberg, the author of Curl. Kyler, I know you really enjoyed this episode.
The whole time, Ned and I were like, we are professionals, which is why we are not just squeeing with excitement. Curl, he wrote Curl. He's maintained Curl for 28 years or something like that. Like, I've been alive for like barely more than that. You have had such a dramatic influence on the global IT world. Like, it was incredible. It was like meeting Bono or something. It was really cool.
It was like I was more excited to meet him than most like rock stars. Let's be honest here. So that is really cool. That's coming out on July 16th. And then on July 30th, we have a talk with Armin Dadger, who's I forget what his position is now. Is he CEO?
I was going to say
CTO?
CIO, something like that. Yeah.
He's one of the founders of HashiCorp.
And similarly, we were like, oh my, this is wild. How are we getting these rock stars? It's amazing.
I don't know. You just ask. So we're going to have him on. And we just wanted to like chat about like now that HashiCorp is part of IBM, what does that mean for HashiCorp? And we had a very candid discussion with him, and he was very open about like what's changing and how things are evolving. And I thought it was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah. The amount of research dollars they're getting to pour into their product and the amount of implied stability that they're getting for like, will Terraform exist in 25 years? IBM's been around for more than 100, I think, or nearly 100. So
it's
yeah,
coming up on it. Yeah.
One of the cool things is like the quantum cryptography resistant encryption is coming to Vault, which is so like, they were like, there's no way we could have funded this. This is so much research dollars to get to this point.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Tons of stuff like that.
People are definitely asking about that quantum safe cryptography and getting it implemented. And now they have the necessary R&D to make sure it's implemented properly in future versions of Vault. So that's super cool. Yeah, so that's going to be an exciting conversation too. So that's coming out on July 30th. And that'll take us into August. And we'll do another August live stream and we'll talk about what's coming out then. Any other exciting news you want to share, Kyler, before we sign off?
No, I mean, maybe MCP The new standard supports OAuth 2 tokens for remote MCP. Love that. Huge fan of that. Which means a lot of the platforms you're used to, Atlassian's Confluence and Jira, GitHub, have their own first-party remote MCP servers. So you don't have to have a binary on your agent environment or on your computer. Like you can actually use theirs, which is great. It's getting more secure. It's evolving. I just think that's amazing. That's what I'm going to be reading about and playing with for the next month until we meet again. So totally recommend, like, follow us on LinkedIn, Google MCP. You can read the spec. This is all developed in the open. But it's really starting to formalize in an enterprise safe way, in like a really actually safe way where we can start building it. And I want to.
Let's go build the future, Kyler.
I love that. Let's get t-shirts.
Pretty sure I stole that from some technology company, but let's do it anyway. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning into the live stream. We love seeing all of you here, and we will do this again in about a month. Until then, enjoy the rest of your summer and take care of each other and yourself.
Yeah.
Bye.
And let's go build the future.
Yes.